Here's why. A stone doesn't have a choice of whether to roll down the hill. It can't say stop. It merely follows the law. On the other hand, in small decisions and big, I have choice. Here's a pen. I have a free choice to drop it or not. If I drop it, it will follow exactly the laws of gravity. But my decision to drop it is purely a free choice, undetermined by the laws of physics. I can go either way. And every moral choice is of that nature. Our entire vocabulary of thou shalt not and don't do this and you shouldn't have done that would have to be wiped out if it was merely an you wouldn't have to teach anyone right and wrong. It would be genetically programmed into them. So the idea that we are already moral by evolution, it's nonsense. Morality ultimately does have to be inculcated.
Next question, please.
Well, I think, I'm sorry, with your leave, that demands a little correction. First, just take the Good Samaritan. Since he was already known of by Jesus of Nazareth, assuming he ever existed, the man from Samaria, his good behavior can't be attributed to Christian teaching, can it, by definition? And if you recall, all the people who behaved worst in that story were priests and Levites and the other devout ones. So they seem to have got he seems to have got his idea of human solidarity without divine or religious permission.
Christianity did not exist at the time.
Anyone here who isn't a serf can say for themselves, yeah, were you taught that it might be a good thing to give blood? Was this inculcated into you? I can certainly say it wasn't into me. When I was a socialist, it was one of the things I was most proud of. I would go to give blood because we were proud of the fact that the British National Health Service never had to buy any. There was always enough. There were always enough people who would go and give a pint. Because why not?
I'll tell you
why, by the way?
They
weren't giving one. I give a pint, I don't lose it. I regenerate it quite quickly. But someone gets one. Something in that gesture appeals to me.
Christopher,
I've done someone a good thing, and it hasn't cost me a sacrifice, and I don't have to act as if I've just done something incredibly virtuous and self-sacrificial and pious. And then, yes, as a matter of fact, I do have a very rare blood group, and one day I'm going to need some blood myself. And I hope enough other people are thinking about me in their way too. What supernatural or celestial permission is required for this, I ask you?
And I will answer.
Creates a mystery where none exists.
I will answer. In many cultures, people don't give blood. In many cultures, this idea that you should give a part of yourself for some guy that you don't even know, there's an old Indian proverb, the tears of strangers are only water. The point I'm trying to get at is, it seems to me that on a personal level, you're right. No one maybe had to say to you, give blood, give blood, give blood. What you're missing is the fact that here you are, atheist Christopher Hitchens, educated and raised in a Christian culture, the culture of Christian Europe, where this idea of compassion, which was not there in the world before, Aristotle scorned it. Aristotle praised magnanimity, the superior man deigning to the inferior man, but not compassion in the sense of feeling for the other guy. It was Christ who invented that and brought it into the world. Now, you are parasitic on that. You are acting out those virtues, but you're refusing to pay debt or even acknowledge the Christian source of them. That, it seems to me, is a little ungrateful historically.
Okay. Let's move to the next question, and the person asked the question can respond. The other person can then make a response to that, and then we'll try to go right to the next question in order to have room for as many as possible.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you for showing up tonight. It was a pleasure listening to you at this point. I have a lot of things I have to say, but of course I want to get succinct on it. A thought I had based on an idea, the materialization from pre-existence into existence, then concluding with post-existence. One might assert a lack of definitive strength regarding post-existence as the absolute final end. I just want to touch on the notion of what appears to be emerging from non-existence. And I understand that there's science saying that things have happened, and I'm really not in either one of your corners, I feel. But I feel like this is substantial for me.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, the question is, I'm trying to generate some feedback, because I think maybe we could humble down and say, hey, well, we are somewhat in the unknown based on linguistics, and we're somehow trapped in this sense of the unknown. I mean, you may feel, I know you're science-based, I know you're somewhat religious-based, but this merging out of non-existence, into existence and then back into post-existence, do you see a pattern there, a 0, 1, 0 pattern?
And do you want Dinesh or Christopher to answer that?
And then row 4 would indicate, if you filled out that pattern, I would suggest a 1. Now just tell me what your general idea that is, your sense of that, not necessarily taking it to verbatim.
I think we should take that as a statement. I move we take that as a statement.
That's fine.
I don't know if it's unchristian to note,
Next,
but
in fact.
okay,
Next.
let's move on.
Another?
Yeah. Dr. Hitson, I come from Tonga
No,
in the
Professor
South
Hitchens,
Pacific.
please.
Professor, before Christianity came, Tonga, Fiji, they have men for dinner. And in Tonga, it was a mess. My question is, let's say they did not come to the Pacific. What do you have to offer us as an atheist? What do you have to offer us?
Well, it's a bit, should I ventriloquize the question? I'm not sure everybody heard it. The gentleman is from the island of Tonga, which is in the Pacific. Used to be a British Crown possession. I don't know if it still is. I'm certain that's how the Christians got there anyway, thanks to British imperialism. And he says that before the Christians came, people were freely dining off one another. This is a fair... In Fiji, yeah. I've heard the stories. It's often struck me as a tremendous problem. Why was no redemption ever sent to this island? Why did it go on? It reminds me of the question I closed by in my original statement. 98,000 years of human existence, and heaven watches with indifference. We're expected to believe 2,000 years ago intervenes by means of a human sacrifice in which all took part and which all must believe, and that's the salvation. And it's not offered to the Chinese, who at that stage can read and can write and can build boats and can have libraries and gunpowder and can spread an idea. No. It takes many thousands of years before, in a very weird form, it gets to China at all. There are parts of Borneo where people still practice cannibalism, where this message still hasn't spread. Now, this isn't a problem for me because I regard it as man-made. It isn't a problem for me. This is my answer, because I regard it as man-made. The answer for you must be, unless you accuse humanism or secularism of advocating cannibalism, which it does not, is how come this design, this revelation, this redemption, this faith-based, and I should remind Dinesh earlier that my identification of the problem was precisely faith, the preference of that over reason and evidence. Why doesn't it seem to work? Why, whenever you ask, why is there so much suffering, misery, ignorance, backwardness, and barbarism? Why is that question unanswerable in the terms in which it's asked? You've just phrased it for Tonga and Fiji.
I think Christopher's missing the force of the argument here, which is not simply that the Christians have been negligent in carrying this universal message, but that when Christianity came to the rest of the world, it brought new values into those cultures. One time I said to my grandfather, how come we are part of a tiny Christian minority in India? And he said, 2 words, the Portuguese Inquisition. Meaning that some very zealous missionaries, possibly accompanied with some bayonets, came to India and Christianized the Indians. I want to say 2 things about this, however. Even though that may have occurred at the beginning, you found in a very short time large numbers of Indians rushing to Christianity. And why? As I looked into this matter as I got a little bit older, I discovered that in the Indian caste system, you have 4 castes with the untouchables at the bottom, and if you're born an untouchable, you're finished. There's nowhere to go. You can't get out of it. Many of the people in the untouchable class were very attracted to Christianity because they saw it as affirming the idea of spiritual equality among persons. This was not immediately or even over a long time translated into complete political or social equality, but it meant something to say to somebody, you're not a nothing, you're not a dog, You are a human being, and that alone counts for a lot. What I'm trying to say, and I think what the gentleman here was trying to say, is that most of the world didn't have that. We didn't have it in Western civilization either. Christianity brought it in. Now, it imported some of it from Judaism, but Judaism was for the tribe. God instructs his chosen people. Christianity takes the idea and universalizes it. If you look at the rights that are stated in the UN Declaration of Human Rights, you notice something very interesting. You read those rights, they're universal rights? No. Virtually all of those rights are the specific legacy of Christianity. It's good that they're universalized because Christianity wanted from the beginning to universalize them. But they are not the shared rights recognized in all the cultures and practices, whether religious or non-religious, in other cultures. So I think we're seeing here from people who have experienced it. I don't care about those inquisitors who came a long time ago. I'm kind of grateful to them, although probably my ancestors would not have shared my enthusiasm. But they brought me into the orbit of Christianity and Western civilization, and the fact that I have the values that I do, the beliefs that I do, the respect for dignity, women, equality, and so on, is entirely the legacy of Christianity as it was exported, I'm sorry to say, Christopher, not by the British, but by the Portuguese. The British could have done a better job.
Next question, please.
The thing is, just a tiny thing. If you claim it for one, you have to claim it for all. It seems to me. It means that means you accept that yes, Hamas does a lot of good with social services. Yes, Louis Farrakhan gets black kids off drugs. Yes, the Mormons must have had a point, devout as they were, when they said black people didn't have souls, as they did until the 1970s. That everything attributable to religion must be attributable to it. You can't just pick and choose the bits that you like. The abolition of cannibalism is one thing. The Muslims say they abolished child sacrifice, but think of the things they also brought. And tell me if this doesn't show, what I've been arguing from the first, that it is a man-made institution, not a divinely appointed one, and that you get exactly the sort of coincidences you would expect from that. The world looks as it would look if there was no God.
Next question, please.
My question is for Mr. Hitchings. Sorry, keep getting them, but...
That's all right.
Movement, evolution, and change are hallmarks of human history. If religion poisons everything, as you claim, why haven't we just gotten rid of it and moved on?
Well, I think that there are two reasons. I'll be quick, because I see when you ask. Religion caters to our egocentricity, to our sense of self-importance, as well as to our masochistic tendencies. I'll say what I mean by that. Religion teaches us that we're originally sinful, that we're sinners in the hands of an angry God. The Quran says we're made out of a clot of blood. The Bible says out of dust. That we're born evil, we're wicked, we should sprawl, we should grovel, we should be glad that someone who even cares to look after us at all. Be grateful. I think this is a disgusting attitude, but you won't, I think, fail to recognize that it's a very accurate picture of what's preached. But, worm as you are, cheer up. The universe is designed with you in mind. And God has a plan for you, and you alone. So to this terrible groveling is added a terrific arrogance as well. Thus you get the phenomenon of people like Mother Teresa, say, brushing past you and pushing you off the pavement, saying, sorry, sorry, out of my way, don't mind me, I'm just on errand for God. And they call this modesty. That's why it appeals. And the second reason why it appeals is, I don't know why this is, because I don't see what there is to fear in it. You're not going to know when you're dead. You're not going to know it. So there's nothing to be frightened of. But people are frightened of death. And the central lie of all religion is that there's a cure for this. And an exception will be made in your own case. An eternal life offered if you make the right propitiations and the right abjections. Well, I'm sorry. I think that's the height of immorality to lie to people like that. But that's why it survived.